The candle on the petite birthday cake had long since melted, leaving a pool of sad pink wax on the pristine white tablecloth, much like the last 7 years of Renee's life. It was her 32nd birthday, a milestone she had secretly earmarked as the one. The year Eric would finally stop chasing the next round of funding, stop treating his company like a newborn infant, and finally ask her to build a life with him that didn't involve 2 a.m. strategy meetings or her picking up his dry cleaning. She sat alone in the corner of the bistro, the kind of place you book 3 months in advance, clutching a velvet box in her pocket, not a ring she expected to receive, but a vintage watch she had bought for him. 7 years of being the perfect partner, the one who never nagged, the one who redesigned his entire app interface for free because she believed in his vision. And here she was, staring at an empty chair while the waiter looked at her with that specific, pitying expression reserved for women who have been stood up. Her phone buzzed against the table, the vibration sounding like a chainsaw in the quiet intimacy of the room. The message from Eric was brief, devoid of emojis, devoid of guilt. Bella's having a panic attack. She can't breathe. I have to go to her place. Order whatever you want. Put it on my card. Happy birthday, babe. Love you. Renee didn't throw the phone. She didn't scream. She simply felt a familiar, dull ache in her chest, a sensation she had spent years relabeling as patience or support. Bella, the 23-year-old assistant with the fragile ego and the uncanny ability to have a crisis exactly when Eric and Renee had plans. It wasn't an affair, Eric insisted. Bella was just young, troubled, and needed guidance. And Renee, the pillar of strength, the accomplished designer, was expected to understand, because Renee didn't have panic attacks. Renee handled things. She signaled the waiter for the check, her hand trembling slightly. She stood up to leave, intending to go home and perhaps cry into a glass of Chardonnay. But her body had other plans. A sharp, searing pain ripped through her lower abdomen, buckling her knees. It wasn't the dull ache of heartbreak. This was visceral, physical agony that stole the breath from her lungs. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white as the room spun. The waiter rushed over, his pity turning to alarm, but Renee, ever the manager, tried to wave him off. "I am fine," she gasped, even as black spots danced in her vision. "Just call a cab." She didn't take a cab. The ambulance ride was a blur of fluorescent lights and bumps that sent shockwaves of fire through her side. By the time she was lying on a gurney in the hallway of the overcrowded R, hooked up to an IV drip, the diagnosis was clear: acute appendicitis, aggravated by severe stress and exhaustion. The doctor, a tired woman with kind eyes, asked if there was anyone they could call. Renee hesitated. Her pride warred with her vulnerability. She dialed Eric. It went to voicemail. She dialed again. 40 minutes later, Eric burst into the waiting area. He looked disheveled, but not with worry, with annoyance. He spotted her, and his shoulders slumped, not in relief, but in resignation. "Jesus, Renee," he said, walking over to her bedside. He didn't take her hand. He checked his watch. "You couldn't have picked a worse night. I was in the middle of calming Bella down. She's terrified of being alone right now." The pain medication had dulled the physical agony, leaving Renee's mind razor sharp. She looked at the man she had dedicated her 20s to. He wasn't asking about her pain. He wasn't asking about the surgery. He was cataloging the inconvenience. "I need surgery, Eric," she said, her voice raspy. "Tonight." He ran a hand through his hair, glancing at his phone as it lit up with a notification. "Right, okay, look, I'll stay until you go under. But I can't be here all night," Bella just texted. "There's a thunderstorm starting, and you know how she gets with loud noises," She's hysterical. The air in the hospital corridor seemed to freeze. The absurdity of it hung between them. She was lying there, her body failing her after years of holding up his world. And he was worried about a grown woman afraid of thunder. It was a clarity so profound, it felt like a physical blow. This wasn't about Bella. This was about respect. This was about the fact that in Eric's hierarchy of needs, Renee's survival ranked lower than his assistant's whim. "You are leaving?" Renee asked, her voice quiet, devoid of the pleading tone she used to use. "Babe, don't be dramatic," Eric sighed, leaning down to peck her forehead, his eyes already on the exit. "You are strong. You handle this stuff. She is a mess. I'll come by in the morning to pick you up, I promise." He turned and walked away. He didn't look back. He didn't see the single tear that tracked down Renee's temple and disappeared into her hairline. He walked out of the sliding glass doors, back to his car, back to Bella, back to the life Renee had built for him, lying in the sterile cold of the emergency room, surrounded by the beeping of monitors and the moans of strangers. Something inside Renee finally snapped. It wasn't a loud break. It was the quiet click of a lock turning, the sunken cost fallacy, the 7 years of birthdays, the missed holidays, the unpaid labor evaporated. She wasn't a girlfriend. She was a resource he had depleted. She reached for her phone with her free hand. Her thumb hovered over his contact name, future husband, and with a sterile efficiency, she edited it to simply Eric. There is a specific kind of violence in silence that is far more lethal than a scream. Changing a contact name from a term of endearment to a legal first name is the modern woman's way of declaring a death. It wasn't a tantrum. It was an administrative decision. Eric thought he was managing a girlfriend who would be there when he returned from his ego trip with Bella. He didn't realize he was being demoted from partner to acquaintance. In real time, the anesthesia wore off, and so did the delusion. When a woman stops fighting for you and starts editing her contact list, the relationship is already in the morgue. Then she opened her email drafts. There was a message there saved from 3 months ago, an offer from a prestigious design firm in New York that she had been planning to decline because Eric couldn't function without her. She hit send. As the nurse came to wheel her into surgery, Renee looked at the empty space where Eric should have been. She felt lighter than she had in years. The appendix was toxic and needed to be cut out to save her life. Eric, she realized, was exactly the same. The surgery would leave a scar, but scars were just proof that you survived. And Renee was done just surviving. She was ready to live. The recovery from surgery was painful, but the clarity that came with it was intoxicating. For 3 days, Eric didn't visit. He sent flowers, lilies, which Renee was allergic to, and a text. "Bella's still really shaken up. Coming to get you Saturday morning. Love you, Saturday morning." The day she was discharged, Renee didn't wait for him. She took an Uber home, wincing as the car navigated the potholes, clutching a pillow against her abdomen. The apartment smelled stale, like unused potential. She walked in and stood in the center of the living room, the room she had painted, the furniture she had sourced, the life she had curated. It felt like walking onto a movie set after the actors had gone home. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum of her wasted time. She didn't scream. She didn't take scissors to his expensive suits or throw his gaming console off the balcony. That was what a hysterical woman would do. And Eric loved to call her hysterical to invalidate her feelings. No, this required the cold, surgical precision of a designer. She began to pack. Not everything, just what was hers, her grandmother's quilt, her sketchbooks, the expensive espresso machine she had bought because Eric only drank instant. her clothes as she emptied the closet, leaving huge gaping holes in the rack where her vibrant dresses used to hang next to his monochrome shirts. She felt a grim satisfaction. She was erasing herself from the narrative. When the last box was sealed, she sat at the kitchen island. This was the most crucial part. She pulled out a stack of documents. Eric hated paperwork. He called it minutia and claimed his brain was too big for fine print. For 7 years, Renee had read every contract, every lease, every non-disclosure agreement. She knew his habits. She knew he trusted her implicitly, not out of love, but out of laziness. She placed 3 documents on the counter. The first was a standard renewal for their renter's insurance. The second was a minor utility transfer. The third was a transfer of intellectual property and resignation agreement, stating that all designs, patents, and client lists developed by Renee belonged solely to her upon her departure. The front door clicked open. Eric breezed in, smelling of Bella's cloying vanilla perfume. He didn't even notice the boxes stacked by the door. "Babe, you're home." He dropped his keys on the counter, not looking at her, already reaching for the fridge. "God, what a week. Bella's cat got sick. And I had to." He stopped, seeing the papers. What is this?" "Just some housekeeping stuff that needs your signature before the weekend," Renee said. Her voice was steady, calm, the voice of the efficient assistant he thought she was. "Insurance? Utilities? Just sign here, here, and here." Eric sighed, the heavy sigh of a man burdened by the world. "You're amazing, Chloe. I don't know what I'd do without you handling the boring stuff." He grabbed a pen. He didn't read a single word. He scratched his signature on the insurance form, then the utility form, then the document that stripped him of his company's most valuable asset, her talent. Weaponized incompetence is a man's favorite shield until a smart woman turns it into his coffin. Eric didn't read the papers because he fundamentally didn't respect Renee's intellect. He saw her labor as an appliance, always running, never requiring maintenance. He assumed she was handling his life, not securing her future. This is the beauty of bureaucratic revenge. It doesn't require a scene. It requires a pen. Ladies, if he is too lazy to read the fine print of his own life, he deserves to lose the asset he failed to insure. Never interrupt a man who is busy signing away his own empire. "Done," he said, tossing the pen down. "I'm gonna jump in the shower. We should order Thai food. I'm starving." He walked past her into the bedroom and closed the door. Renee waited until the water turned on. She picked up the signed papers, folded them neatly, and placed them in her purse. She took one last look around the kitchen. On the counter sat a cheap plastic keychain. Eric had bought her from a gas station on their first road. It was a little globe that said, "You mean the world to me." For years, she had treasured it like a diamond. She picked it up. It felt light, hollow. With a flick of her wrist, she dropped it into the trash can. It landed with a dull thud on top of coffee grounds and eggshells. She picked up her purse, grabbed the handle of her suitcase, and walked out the front door. She didn't slam it. She closed it gently, with a definitive click. Eric emerged from the shower 20 minutes later, a towel wrapped around his waist, water dripping from his hair. "Babe, did you order the pad thai? I want extra peanuts." Silence. "Renee." He walked into the living room. It took his brain a moment to process what he was seeing. The empty bookshelves, the bare walls where her paintings had been. The missing rug. He ran to the closet. His clothes hung there, lonely and exposed, stripped of the color and life that had surrounded them. "Renee." He grabbed his phone to call her. It went straight to voicemail. He tried to text. Message not delivered. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced his arrogance. He ran to the kitchen, looking for a note, a sign, anything. There was nothing. The counter was wiped clean. The only evidence that she had been there at all was the faint smell of her shampoo lingering in the air. And the trash can. He looked down there. Amidst the garbage sat the plastic globe keychain. "You mean the world to me." He stared at it, the silence of the apartment pressing in on his eardrums like deep water. She hadn't just left. She had vanished. And for the first time in 7 years, Eric was completely, terrifyingly alone. 3 days. That was how long Eric arrogantly assumed it would take for Renee to come crawling back. He told Bella over lunch that Renee was pulling a stunt, a desperate cry for attention because she was jealous of their friendship. "She'll be back when she realizes she can't afford her rent." He laughed, swirling his wine. Bella giggled, touching his hand, her eyes wide with feigned sympathy. Poor Renee, she has always been so emotional. But by day 5, the silence was deafening. And then, the real noise began. It started on a Monday morning. Eric strode into his office, ready to bark orders, only to find his team standing around in confusion. "Where are the schematics for the Orion project?" his lead engineer asked. "The client meeting is in an hour. The files are gone from the server." "Don't be ridiculous," Eric scoffed. "Renee manages the archives, just email her." "We did." Her email bounced back. "User unknown." Eric froze. He rushed to his computer, logging into the shared drive. Empty folder after folder. Orion Nebula, Project Phoenix. All gone. In their place was a single PDF document titled Notice of Intellectual Property Reclamation. He opened it, his hands shaking. It was the document he had signed, the boring housekeeping stuff. It detailed in ironclad legal language that every design created by Renee, every client relationship she had nurtured, and every patent she had filed was her personal property, licensed to the company only for the duration of her employment. Upon resignation, the license was revoked. "She can't do this," he whispered, the blood draining from his face. She is my girlfriend." "Was," a voice said. His secretary stood in the doorway, looking terrified. "Mr. Vance, the investors are on line 1. They saw the news." "What news?" She silently turned her tablet around. A headline from a prominent tech blog screamed, "Vance Tech loses genius designer. Renee Davis joins Aurelia Group as partner." Eric felt the room spin. He grabbed the phone. "Bella, get in here. We need to redo the Orion sketches from memory." "Now," Bella sauntered in, holding a latte, looking annoyed. "But Eric, I have a nail appointment at noon. And besides, I don't know how to do those drawings. Renee never showed me." "You are the creative director now," Eric yelled, losing control. "Figure it out," Bella burst into tears. "You are yelling at me. I am having a panic attack." She collapsed onto the sofa, hyperventilating. For the first time, Eric looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but revulsion. Her tears, once a weapon that made him feel like a protector, now just looked pathetic. "Stop it," he snapped. "Just stop. This isn't a game anymore." He ignored her sobs and frantically dialed Renee's number again. Still blocked, he called her mother. "Who is this?" her mother asked coldly. "Oh, Eric, don't call here again." Click. The next week was a slow-motion car crash. Without Renee to smooth over his abrasive personality, clients walked out of meetings. Without her designs, the product looked generic and cheap. The final blow came when Bella, trying to prove her worth, uploaded a new design to their website. Within hours, social media was ablaze. She had copied a competitor's logo, almost verbatim. The stock price didn't just dip, it plummeted. Eric sat in his darkened office, surrounded by takeout containers and unpaid bills. His phone buzzed. It was a text from a mutual friend, captioned, "Thought you should know." He opened the image. It was a photo taken at the Met Gala in New York. There was Renee. She looked breathtaking, wearing a gown of her own design that shimmered like liquid starlight. Her hair was different, sleek, sharp, sophisticated. She wasn't the tired girl in the oversized sweater anymore. She was a queen, and she wasn't alone. Standing next to her, looking at her as if she were the only person in the universe, was Justin Thorne. The billionaire venture capitalist, the man who owned half of Manhattan. His hand rested possessively, protectively, on the small of her back. He wasn't leaning on her, he was supporting her. Eric zoomed in on Renee's face. She was laughing, a genuine head thrown back, laugh he hadn't seen in years. She looked radiant. She looked successful. She looked free. He threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, much like his ego. He had traded a diamond for a piece of glass, and the glass had just cut him deep. "I am going to New York," he muttered to the empty room. "She belongs to me." But the desperation in his voice betrayed him. He knew, deep down, that the woman in the photo was already light years out of his reach. New York City didn't just welcome Renee, it inhaled her. The energy of the Aurelia Group was electric, a stark contrast to the stagnant air of Eric's office. Here, ideas were currency, and competence was king. Renee wasn't the girlfriend who helps out. She was the visionary. But the most surprising element of her new life wasn't the corner office, overlooking Central Park, or the hefty paycheck. It was Justin. Justin Thorne was a titan. He moved through the world with the quiet confidence of a man who could buy and sell countries. Yet, around Renee, the titan softened. He didn't shower her with flashy gifts to buy her affection. He gave her things that mattered. He found a rare, out-of-print book on Bauhaus architecture she had mentioned once. He ensured her coffee was waiting on her desk, perfectly brewed, every single morning. He listened. One rainy afternoon, they sat in his private library, reviewing portfolio drafts. Renee paused, looking at him. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you hire me? Why are you so good to me?" Justin closed his laptop. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished object. He placed it on the table between them. It was a silver dollar worn smooth by time. "Do you remember?" he asked softly. Renee picked it up, a memory flickering like a candle in a drafty room, high school. The gym locker room, a boy, overweight and terrified, locked inside by the varsity team. They were pounding on the door, chanting cruel names. Renee, a quiet junior, had heard the noise. She hadn't walked away. She had grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed the lock until it broke. She had found the boy crying in the corner. She hadn't pitied him. She had handed him the silver dollar from her pocket. "My dad says this is lucky," she had told him. "But luck is just courage in disguise. Buy yourself something nice and don't let the bastards win." "That was you," she whispered, looking at the handsome, powerful man before her. The resemblance was there, buried under years of discipline and success, the kindness in the eyes. "You saved me, Renee," Justin said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just from the locker room. You taught me that my worth wasn't defined by their insults. I've spent 15 years building myself into a man worthy of that silver dollar and worthy of you." Tears pricked Renee's eyes. Eric had spent 7 years tearing her down to make himself feel big. Justin had spent 15 years building himself up so he could stand beside her. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't want you to know," Justin replied, covering her hand with his. I wanted you to see the man I am now, not the boy I was. But when I saw you shrinking, disappearing into Eric's shadow, I couldn't wait anymore. The moment was shattered by the buzzing of the intercom. Justin's assistant's voice was tense. Mr. Thorne, there is a disturbance in the lobby, a Mr. Vance. He says he is here for his fiancée. Renee stiffened. The ghost had followed her. Let him up, Justin said, his voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze nitrogen. I think it is time we cleared the air. 10 minutes later, the elevator doors slid open. Eric stormed in. He looked like a wreck. Unshaven, his suit wrinkled, his eyes wild. He spotted Renee and marched toward her, ignoring Justin completely. Renee, thank God, pack your bags, we're leaving. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. This little game has gone on long enough. The company is a mess. Bella is useless. I need you. Let go of her, Justin said. He didn't shout. He didn't stand up. He simply spoke, and the authority in his voice hit Eric like a physical wall. Eric sneered, finally acknowledging him. Stay out of this, Thorne. This is between me and my girl. She is just confused. She knows where she belongs. I am not confused, Renee said, standing up. She yanked her arm free, her eyes blazing. And I certainly don't belong to you. I am not a possession, Eric. I am a partner. Something you never understood. Partner. Eric laughed, a manic, desperate sound. You were a secretary with a sketchbook. I made you. Justin stood then. He towered over Eric, his presence overwhelming. He stepped between them, shielding Renee, not because she was weak, but because she was precious. You didn't make her, Justin said coldly. You drained her, and now that the well is dry, you are thirsty. But you are trespassing, Mr. Vance, on my property and in her life. She loves me, Eric screamed, spit flying. She gave me 7 years, and you gave her nothing but anxiety and debt, Justin countered. He placed a hand on Renee's shoulder. Renee is the chief design officer of Aurelia. She is a shareholder, and she is my partner in every sense of the word. Eric froze. He looked from Justin to Renee. He saw the way she leaned into Justin's touch, not out of fear, but out of trust. He saw the contempt in her eyes. Security, Justin said into the intercom. Escort Mr. Vance out. If he returns, arrest him. 2 burly guards appeared. As they dragged a protesting Eric toward the elevator, he screamed back. You'll regret this, Renee. You are nothing without me, nothing. The doors closed, cutting off his toxicity. Silence returned to the office. Renee let out a breath she felt she had been holding for a decade. She looked up at Justin. Thank you, always, Justin said, kissing the top of her head. Now, let's get back to work. We have an empire to run. But Renee knew the war wasn't over. Eric was a narcissist. He wouldn't stop until he was destroyed, and she was finally ready to be the one to push the button. Eric didn't leave New York, fueled by humiliation and the desperate delusion that he could still win. He lingered. He called Bella, who arrived a day later, struggling a suitcase full of designer clothes she had bought with the company credit card, a card that was rapidly maxing out. We're going to crash the spring gala, Eric declared, pacing their cramped hotel room. All the major investors will be there. When they see me with you, young and fresh, and see Renee, probably looking tired and old, they'll realize who the real visionary is. We'll pitch the new concept directly to them. Bella whined, applying lip gloss. But my anxiety, Eric crowds, make me feel faint. Just take a pill and look pretty, he snapped. This is our last chance. The spring gala was the event of the season, held in a cavernous ballroom dripping with crystal and orchids. Renee arrived on Justin's arm, looking like a modern-day goddess in midnight blue silk. She moved through the room with grace, shaking hands, discussing market trends, her laughter light and genuine. She was in her element. Eric and Bella arrived late. They hadn't been invited, but Eric had bribed a waiter to let them in the service entrance. They burst into the main hall, looking out of place and frantic. Eric spotted Renee chatting with a group of influential tech journalists. He straightened his tie and marched over, dragging Bella behind him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eric announced loudly, interrupting a conversation about renewable energy. "I am so glad to see everyone. I wanted to personally introduce the new face of Vance Tech, the real creative genius behind our upcoming launch." He pushed Bella forward. She stumbled in her, too. High heels, looking terrified. The room went silent. The embarrassment was palpable. "Eric," Renee said, her voice calm but carrying across the room. "You are not supposed to be here." "I am here to save my company from your lies," Eric retorted, his voice rising. "You stole my IP. You abandoned us. But Bella here, she is loyal. She is the future." Bella, sensing the hostility of the crowd and realizing she was out of her depth, resorted to her only trick. She gasped, clutched her chest, and slumped dramatically against Eric. I can't breathe. My heart. It is a panic attack. I think I am dying." Eric caught her, looking triumphant. "See, you've upset her. She is delicate. Is there a doctor? She needs help." He looked at Renee, expecting her to crumble, to apologize, to rush to help, like she always did. Renee didn't move. She took a sip of her champagne. She looked at Justin, who nodded slightly. Then she pulled out her phone. "Don't worry, everyone," she announced to the room. "I am calling 911. If she is dying, she needs paramedics, not attention." "Wait, no," Eric started. But it was too late. "Yes, 911. I am at the plaza. We have a young woman collapsing, possible cardiac arrest. Please send an ambulance immediately." This is without a doubt the unparalleled highlight of the evening. Bella weaponized her fragility to steal attention. Renee weaponized protocol to expose the farce. If you are going to feign a medical emergency to escape accountability, you better be prepared for the paramedics. By treating the panic attack as a genuine crisis, Renee stripped the romance out of the drama. She didn't play the jealous ex-girlfriend, she played the responsible adult. There is nothing that kills a manipulative performance faster than a defibrillator and a skeptical police officer. It wasn't cruelty, it was civic duty. Within minutes, the sirens wailed outside. Paramedics burst in with a stretcher and a defibrillator. They swarmed Bella, checking her vitals, asking loud clinical questions. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Is your chest tight? Did you take drugs?" Bella, faced with real medical professionals, panicked for real. "No, I am fine. Get off me. I just wanted to leave." She pushed the oxygen mask away. Her fainting spell miraculously cured, the crowd murmured. The charade was exposed. It wasn't a medical emergency. It was a performance, and a bad one. "Sir," a police officer who had accompanied the medics stepped forward to Eric. "Did you authorize this emergency call for a non-emergency? That is a misuse of resources." "She has anxiety," Eric stammered, sweating. "She seems fine now," the officer noted dryly. "And we ran your ID, Mr. Vance. There is a warrant for your arrest, fraud, embezzlement, unpaid wages to your staff back home." Eric turned pale. "That is a mistake. My accounts are frozen because of her." He pointed a shaking finger at Renee. Justin stepped forward then. "Actually," he said, his voice smooth and deadly, Your accounts are frozen because I bought your debt, Eric. All of it. The bank loans, the credit lines. You defaulted yesterday. I own Vance Tech now. Or rather, I own the shell that is left. Eric looked at Justin, then at Renee. The realization crashed over him. He wasn't just beaten, he was erased. Bella, he whispered, turning to his loyal assistant. Bella was already backing away, trying to blend into the crowd. I didn't know, she squeaked. I thought he was rich. I am single. I am just an intern. She fled toward the exit, leaving him alone in the center of the ballroom. As the officer handcuffed Eric, reading him his rights, Renee stepped closer. She looked down at him, not with hate, but with pity. You promised me the world once, Eric, she said softly. But you never realized I was the one holding it up. She turned her back on him. She took Justin's arm, and together they walked out into the cool New York night, leaving the chaos behind them. Eric watched her go, the woman he had taken for granted, the woman he had lost, shining brighter than any diamond he could have ever bought her. He had gambled everything on a bluff, and she had called it with a royal flush. The fall of Eric Vance was swift and brutal, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms for weeks. Without Justin's capital or Renee's designs, Vance Tech was liquidated for parts. The office furniture was auctioned off. The sleek glass walls were stripped bare. Eric avoided jail time only by declaring complete personal bankruptcy, moving back into his parents' basement in Ohio, the very fate he had spent his life running from. Bella, true to form, rebranded herself as a wellness influencer on TikTok, selling dubious anxiety teas and claiming she was a victim of a toxic workplace, never mentioning Eric's name again. But in New York, life bloomed. 6 months later, Renee stood in the wings of the Lincoln Center, her heart hammering a rhythm of pure adrenaline. It was the debut of her own fashion line, Aurelia and Renee. The collection was a triumph, architectural, bold, unapologetically feminine. It was the visual diary of a woman who had broken herself into pieces and rebuilt a masterpiece. Justin found her there, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked dashing in a tuxedo, but his eyes held that same soft warmth from the gym locker room all those years ago. Nervous, he asked. Terrified, Renee admitted, smoothing her silk skirt. What if they hate it? What if I am? What if I am not enough? The old ghosts of Eric's criticism still lingered, faint whispers in the back of her mind. Justin took her hands. Look out there. He pulled the curtain back slightly. The audience was packed. Editors from Vogue, buyers from Paris, celebrities. But in the front row, beaming with pride, were her parents. They were chatting animatedly with Justin's mother, laughing. They looked happy, respected. They aren't here for a brand, Renee. They are here for you. You aren't Eric's shadow anymore. You are the sun, and the sun doesn't ask permission to shine. Renee squeezed his hands. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver dollar. She had had it mounted into a necklace, a simple silver chain holding the tarnished coin close to her heart. For courage, she said, fastening it around her neck. For us, Justin corrected gently. The music swelled, the lights dimmed. Renee took a deep breath, stepped out onto the runway, and the applause hit her like a physical wave, warm, roaring, validating. She walked to the end of the stage, the lights blinding, and for a moment she saw her past self. The girl waiting in the bistro, the girl crying in the ER, the girl packing boxes in silence. She smiled at them, a smile of forgiveness and release. I made it, she thought. We made it. Later that night, on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the city lights glitter below like scattered diamonds, Justin handed her a glass of champagne. To the future, he proposed. Renee clinked her glass against his. No, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid, unwavering strength of him. To the present, because finally, it is mine. She looked down at her finger. There was no ring yet. They didn't need symbols to prove their commitment. But she knew it was coming, not as a shackle or a bribe or a delayed promise, but as a celebration. 7 years of rain had finally ended, and the view from the other side of the storm was magnificent. Let's pour a glass of something full-bodied and discuss the construction manager girlfriend. Renee spent 7 years building a man who is structurally unsound. We see this constantly: brilliant, competent women who mistake a man's potential for his reality. We polish them, we organize them, we ghostwrite their emails, and we convince ourselves that this is sweat equity will eventually pay dividends in love and loyalty. It rarely does. Eric didn't leave Renee because she was lacking. He left because she was finished. The project was done. He ran to Bella not because she was better, but because she was a mess. Men like Eric need a crisis to feel masculine. Renee's competence made him feel small. Bella's chaos made him feel like a savior. It is a fragile ego that requires a damsel in distress to function. But let's look at the pivot. The moment Renee stopped building Eric, she had the bricks to build herself. And notice the difference with Justin. Justin didn't need a mother, a manager, or a maid. He needed a peer. A partner isn't someone who hands you a fire extinguisher. He's the one who helps you build a house that doesn't catch fire in the first place. Renee's victory wasn't marrying a billionaire. Her victory was realizing that her labor was too expensive for a man who couldn't afford to pay attention. So here is my question for you tonight. Have you ever found yourself managing a project boyfriend? Did you wait for the ribbon, cutting ceremony, or did you, like Renee, finally realize you were the architect of a building you weren't allowed to live in? Tell me your stories in the comments. I'm listening. Madam, read out.